Early 1900s and the Depression, all the way through to the Depression. So we're talking 1900 to 1940. Dollar diplomacy was aimed towards Latin America. The idea was investing money, not bullets. Why did Taft send troops, though, into Latin America? Because he wanted to protect American economic interests. So he sent troops, for instance, into Nicaragua, where Americans had gone in and bought up a lot of land and set up literally banana plantations. And then the Guatemalan people began to want their land back, and there was talk of revolution, and Mexico is just going through a revolution from 1910 to 1920. And so Taft ends up sending troops in to protect American financial interests. Does dollar diplomacy end with Taft? No, it's continued with Wilson, and then in the 1920s also. U.S.'s first reaction to World War I was isolationism or neutrality. They use the word isolation a lot with World War I. The fact that we did not want to become involved. Did we want to continue trading though? Yes. Did we loan money? Yes. Remember, we loaned $2.3 billion, that's B with a boy, to France and England, mostly to England, and only 27 million to Germany. A cartoon about U.S. neutrality. The cartoon is Uncle Sam standing on the shores, and at the back of the cartoon you see Europe, and Lady Liberty, looking like the Statue of Liberty, is there saying to Uncle Sam, you don't want to get involved. And you can tell that Europe is blowing apart because there's black plumes of smoke above it. Okay? So the idea of the cartoon is we want to remain neutral. The Lusitania in 1915, a British passenger ship was going from New York back to England. The German embassy warned Americans not to get on board that ship because the Germans had the practice of unrestricted submarine warfare, which is the next term, meaning they would fire without warning on any ship, passenger, merchant ship, naval vessel, whatever. So they did fire on the Lusitania, and we found out that it was carrying ammunition because it blew sky high, and 128 Americans died. Did that cause us immediately to get involved in World War I? No, not for 2 more years. But ultimately it's the practice of unrestricted submarine warfare which causes us to get into the war. Okay? After the Lusitania, we complained. Germany, for a while, gave up unrestricted submarine warfare, and then they reinstated the policy in January of 1917. Why did the U.S. enter World War I? Because they started unrestricted submarine warfare again. The Allies were losing, and businessmen and bankers said, oh my God, we're going to lose our $2.3 billion for 27 million back. Bad deal. Most Americans were pro-British. All the propaganda was anti-German. The bloody hand of the Hun type of thing. The AEF, the American Expeditionary Force, is what the American troops fought underneath in Europe. They were led by John Pershing, General John J. Pershing. They did not take orders from British or French commanders. They took orders only from American personnel. They came in and saved the day. Most troops, even though we declared war in April of 1917, most American troops did not arrive in Europe until January of 1918. And by then the Germans were really winning, and we came in with fresh troops and meat, and so to speak, and saved it. War boards were set up to tool the economy from a capitalistic peacetime economy to a wartime economy, to keep inflation from getting out of control, to make sure that the materials reach factories that's necessary to make guns and weapons and all that kind of ships, etc. One of the war board committees was the Creel Committee, which was charged with propaganda. 1900s Depression, we're about 10 terms down, U.S. versus Schenck. Are we there? So during World War I, when we get involved in 1917, Congress passes in early 1918 the Espionage and the Sedition Acts, aimed at making sure nobody's spying for those dirty Krauts, or they call them Huns in World War I, Krauts in World War II. Okay, so the Germans. And secondly, nobody speaks out against the war or the government. That's the sedition part. So when Eugene V. Debs says that we only went to war to protect bankers and their interest in the war, what does the government do? They charge him with sedition and put him in jail. The case was challenged in court, not Debs's, but the whole Sedition Act was challenged in courts, and what the court said, the Supreme Court said, was that in wartime, when people represented a clear and present danger, it was okay to pass sedition acts. Okay? A picture of a woman working on women working on a train in 1918. The idea that women took jobs that men couldn't fill because they were at war. So how would you know it was a World War I train versus a World War II train? A World War II era train looks more like a bullet. It's streamlined. It has a smooth front. You don't see a stack because it's already powered by diesel fuel for the most part. Okay? So it looks more like a train that you would see today on Arroyo Grande if you've ever gotten caught by the train there. Okay? World War I train would look like an old-fashioned locomotive with a steam engine thing, usually a car behind the engine that was be full of coal or wood. The World War I, this particular picture for World War I, the front of the train had a cow catcher on it. Now, cow catchers were one of two ways: a pointy metal thing that looked like a V, or a metal thing that looked like a scoop. And the idea is either way, if a cow was on the track, it would hit the cow and toss him off before the train could derail. Okay, if you hit the cow head on, it would cause the train to derail. If the cow catcher hit the cow, boom, off goes Mr. Cow, the train goes on. Or it scoops him up and throws him off. Either way. The pointy one was apparently more effective. World War I effect on blacks. Was there integration of troops? No. Wet skin and education. I have no idea what that even refers to. Wets in this time period are people who are for prohibition or against prohibition? Against prohibition. They want to drink. So I have no idea what that means. Southern blacks moved to cities, yes or no? Yes. Renewed prejudice and discrimination? Yes. Blacks moving to the cities was called the Great Migration. And why did they move from 1910 to 1920? For what, factory jobs, and because they hoped there would be less discrimination. Okay? Did they find jobs? Well, during the war they did. Did they find less discrimination? No, it just wasn't legalized discrimination. The 14 points called for. Okay, so in January of 1918, Wilson gives his State of the Union address, and he talks about the 14 points. These are 14 things that he thinks need to be done to make the world safe from any future wars. Things like freedom of the seas, no tariffs. Every country will disarm except for its public safety. So you have enough weapons in the country to maintain a police force, but you don't need to have a military. All right? Restore Belgium. And the last of the 14 points was a set up what is going to be called the League of Nations. All right? So, the questions about the League of Nations. Who in disagreement with the Treaty of Versailles and the League of Nations? They were called reservationists, and the leader was a guy named Henry Cabot Lodge.